People who speak a second language. What have you overheard people saying about you when they thought you couldn't understand? One evening, I called an Uber driven by Abdelatif. Mr. Abdelatif, an Egyptian, was nice enough at the start, but then took a phone call from an Arabic-speaking friend of his and started complaining very colorfully about his day. He eventually finished his rant by stating that he would head home after he takes this one last ibn Kihib, bad Arabic slur, in his car home. I, of course, didn't drop the ruse and pretended that my Uber driver didn't just loudly, and quite needlessly, insult me to this random person on the phone. When we finally arrived, he told me to have a nice evening. Sir, I told him Tisib Hili Hira Yaru Aimk, the gist of which is, good night, asshat, and walked away, putting on my best display of being highly offended, even though I was dying from laughter on the inside after seeing the look on his face. Weeks later, I took another Uber, driven by Mr. Badri, an Iraqi. He seemed like he had a lot of trouble with English over the phone, so I started the ride off by greeting him in Arabic. He was quickly at ease, and was surprised that I spoke Arabic so fluently for a what's the dumbest mistake you've seen an incompetent co-worker make. At a Petco, all the guinea pigs were in a big plexiglass enclosure with a center divider, boys on one side and girls on the other. An employee decided that all the long-haired guinea pigs should be on one side and short-haired on the other. It took forever to sort them out and all the females were pregnant. Social worker here. We're supposed to see clients who live with families once a year. A mom of a kid kept calling her worker but got no answer. Mom called the on-call worker who discovered the assigned worker had logged the visits in and made their own notes. The mom said she never saw her in 2 years. This led to her whole caseload being audited, and then they found she had logged a visit with a client who'd been dead for months. While being audited, her supervisor decided to do a surprise visit to the client she was supposed to see. She never showed up and logged in the visit the next day. Tried to cool down hot oil, in a chute, all ready to be emptied, with a nice big bucket of water. I heard Thomas Noah only to turn around and see a geyser of hot oil shooting towards the ceiling before it hit and splashed down around him. Nobody was hurt. Some effing how. Your security guards of Reddit, what was the most effed up thing you've ever saw on your shift? I didn't see it, but in our daily pass-along were warnings to be on the lookout for a woman shitting in the stairwells. Worked at a building that had an attached thrift store and saw a fire truck roll up to the entrance on the camera. Ran over to figure out what was going on. I had no calls or alarms going off. Turns out a morbidly obese customer had fallen off the toilet and gotten stuck between the toilet and the wall, and managed to call 911. The part I'd actually consider effed up was one of the firefighters pulled me aside after and said we took a blanket off the rack to cover them up, but, you're not going to want it back. I'm not a security guard, but I've witnessed security guards handling it several times. I used to work at a casino and there would be addicts who would not step away from a slot machine for anything. That includes using the bathroom. One time a lady had shit herself, sat in it, and continued to play. Security had to saran wrap her so nothing would leak out and send her home. What was the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? Friend got married right after HS, left for boot camp and deployed soon after. Gave his wife power of attorney. She destroyed his credit and put him $200,000 in debt in 8 months. They divorced, but his CO advised him to just give her whatever she wants to keep her quiet. So now he's also paying alimony. It sucks because he only joined the military to pay for college, but now he's afraid he won't be able to afford it even with a GI Bill. In less than 5 years, one of my cousins was married twice, to 2 equally horrible people, and blew through 2 inheritances. He and his first wife trashed a house my grandmother let them live in for free and got mad when she asked him to pay for repairs. He is now completely alienated from family, including his parents, and disowned. Drop everything and all ambitions in his own life to try and help his girlfriend pursue hers. She lived overseas. It did not end well. She cheated on him and told him, and he dropped the relationship. By then the damage was long done. He had dropped out of school and spent every penny he had on her. What made the popular guy girl lose their popularity? Freshman year of high school. Very popular guy who was the it kid, freshman phenom wide receiver on a nationally ranked team. We were all leaving class one day. He randomly decided it was a good idea to make fun of a very well-loved handicapped guy who was dying of his condition, some advanced form of water on the brain if I remember correctly, and even decided to punch him. This knocked the poor kid to the ground. About 10 guys immediately jumped him. A shop teacher saw it, the WR getting his, happened and let it continue for a minute before stopping things. Mr. Popular got quite messed up in that short window. Kicked off team. Expelled. Moved schools in a move that I'm guessing was a way to start over at a new school. Never heard from him again. Went from pep rally king to degenerate outcast in 5 minutes. I had a front row seat and was one of 50 plus who testified to the school admins. The victim passed away later that school year from his condition. You almost never heard him speak, but when he did he was always kind and thoughtful. What's a no shit moment where you realized you've been doing something the wrong way for years? When I was 5, a Pizza Hut employee told me that the powder on the breadsticks was called fairy dust. Ordered extra fairy dust on my breadsticks until I was around 14 when an employee said, "Do you mean garlic salt?" It still devastates me to realize how obtuse I was. It wasn't very long, But when I was learning to drive, my dad was explaining the rule of thumb regarding a safe distance to be behind the car in front of you. I thought it meant to hold your thumb up, and if your thumb didn't cover the entire car you were too close to it. When he caught me doing that, he asked me what I was doing. When I explained, he burst out laughing, then considered it, and concluded it wasn't a bad idea but perhaps a bit distracting. Couple years ago I was trying to open some toothpaste and had to break the seal of the tube. I used to look for something like a nail to break it. Then one day I looked at the pointy end of the cap and thought, what if I could use this to break it, and oh shit, it did fit and broke it effortlessly, and so did every other tube product I had in the house in their respective cap. My mind was blown. It's the most refreshing act of I don't give a F that you've ever witnessed. One day at my old job, my old boss called everybody together because the upper management decided to cut some people out. This old lady overheard it from the bathroom, and then she zoomed out of there, grabbed her stuff and left before she could get properly fired. She then called the HR to tell them she was getting her paid vacation that was on hold, and hung up the phone before the HR could respond, and she turned off all possible contacts, like cell phone and emails. Then she took 30 days of paid vacation plus 4 days of paid sick leave plus 29 days of absence. In my country, the law says you can be absent for 29 straight days without being fired for just cause. When she came back, she was properly fired without just cause and got all benefits like unemployed insurance, etc. Engineer was getting a lot of pressure put on him, lots of overtime the last couple of months, had a meeting and was getting bombarded with questions and a lot of hostile comments from management. He stopped for a few seconds and said, "I'm out of here," and walked out of the meeting. The project came to a screeching halt, which lasted 2 months until people came up to speed. What's the cruelest prank you've ever seen? In high school, one of the cutest girls in my grade came up to me and told me she had a crush on me and wanted to go out on a date. I was skeptical because no one had ever asked me out before, but I was growing into my body pretty well and definitely more attractive than I was as an early teen, so I just figured puberty was doing some good work for me. We were 16, 17 and had both just got our licenses, so she said she'd meet me at the movie theater and we'd go have dinner after the movie. I told my mom and she got all excited and helped me pick out an outfit and took pictures of me before my first ever date. Cringe AF, but you know how it goes. I went and got a haircut and my car detailed so it'd be rolling fresh, you know. And believe me, I was looking tasty. Fresh shave, hair edged up sharp enough to cut glass. I was dripped out before the phrase even existed. So I show up at the theater a couple minutes early and I'm waiting for her, and after like 15 minutes I think maybe I'll call her to make sure she didn't like have an emergency come up or something. We didn't have texting back then, so I call her and she answers on speakerphone and like 5 other girls are all laughing at me saying things like, "Ha ha ha, he actually showed up." So yeah, it was all just a prank to hurt my feelings. Jokes on me, I guess. It is something you've done purely out of the goodness of your heart, but have never told anyone. My friend told me he was between leases for about a month. We had a sleepover one night and basically, I just never told him to leave. I lived in a micro studio, so we shared the bed. I bought the groceries, and let him wear whatever of my clothes fit were appropriate. I'm a chick. He'd cook for me, clean while I was asleep, other nice things that showed he appreciated it. We never talked about it. I never told anyone he was living with me. Our friends just thought we were hanging out a lot, which we did do before, so it wasn't weird. He stayed with me for about 3 months. When Thanksgiving came, his own family didn't reach out to him, so I hosted him at my parents' house. They were living in a different state at the time but didn't sell the house. I am pretty sure I saved his life. He was depressed at the beginning. I definitely saved him from being homeless. I have no idea where his possessions were or how he had money, but honestly, I didn't care. I just took care of him any way I could, and he paid me back in love and amazing barbecued chicken once a week. What are some guy secrets girls don't know about? When people come crying to us, our first inclination is to fix the problem. If we tie down anything in the back of a pickup truck or trailer, it's physically impossible for us not to stand back and say that's not going anywhere. We really do think your hair is good. It looked good before and after you got a haircut. It looked good curly and it looked good straight. It looked good when you woke up and when you made it. As long as it's shaped like the hair we gave girls on stick figures when we were 5 years old, we think it looks good. I'm a girl and I've found out through the years that when guys say something, don't think too much into it, like what's the hidden meaning? Don't overthink it. Guys normally say stuff that should be taken at face value. The nod. When you see a guy you don't know, or kind of know but don't really know well enough to talk to, walks by, you give a subtle nod of your head, which they return. We desperately want you to toss us things instead of just handing them to us. I like hugs. I'm not staring at you, I'm zoned out thinking about how I'd start a brewery in medieval England whilst my eyes just happen to be facing your direction.